Okay.
Okay. And when I'm finished, just press stop.
Or you can just end the meeting.
Okay. בסדר. Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another shiur by Web Yeshiva on Exodus from family to nation. And I'm going to share the sources that I've sent you for today. Okay. So the last thing we saw last week was the verses about Moshe growing up, and we asked the question, how old was he? He was 3 or 5 when he went back to the daughter of Pharaoh after he finished nursing, and then he grew up again, and after some time, and he saw his brothers, and he saw an Egyptian hitting one of his brothers, and he hit the Egyptian, and he hit him in the sand. And the second day, he saw more. He saw 2 fighting people. They were 2 Jews, and he told one of them, "Why are you hitting your brother?" And the Hebrew told him, "Oh, who are you?" Yeah, and he retorted, "Who made you chief and ruler over us?" And I want you to hear that will echo in our ears, that the words he is saying, this let's call him the violent Jew who doesn't mind hitting his fellow Jew. He's saying it out of antagonism, out of dislike. But what he's saying is what's going to happen, right? Moshe will become chief and ruler over us, but with some limits. In other words, what this Jew is experiencing in Egypt is that the chief and the rulers are human beings, and you can be the king. But what Moshe will teach the people of Israel, that there's one ruler over all of us, and human beings are just being his messengers, his tools to do good to other people. And that this is what Moshe will teach them. And if we think about the overall topic of this course, becoming from a family to a nation, and I could even say, becoming from an individual to a family to a nation, what we will have to learn as a nation, that we don't the real king, the real ruler over us is never the king, and never only the Kohen, and never only the prophet. It is God, and they are just messengers to make sure that people are doing the right thing. So, and when Moshe heard that, he was frightened and thought, then the matter is known. And I just want to say that also being frightened is important here, because it's going to take Moshe, and it's going to take us as people a long time not to be afraid, not to fear, and put our trust in God. Okay, so that's where we stopped last week, and now we continue with the story. We're still in Shmot Perek Bet, with chapter 2, and we're going to read from the verse of 11 till the end, till Pasuk of Hey. And here, so not only Moshe frightened and thought, then the matter is known, the matter that I killed the Egyptian, it is we are also being told that Pharaoh heard the thing. When Pharaoh learned of the matter, he sought to kill Moses. And this is another question here, or something which is really unclear. Why וישמע פרעה את הדבר הזה? Pharaoh heard of the matter, or that thing in the Hebrew. What did he hear? Did he hear about the first case? Did he hear about the second case? Something was there that it's not really clear, but Pharaoh heard about Moshe, something about Moshe, that probably what the pasuk means, that he killed an Egyptian. And the fact that he was the son of his daughter was not enough for him to be saved from the wrath of Pharaoh. and Pharaoh wants to kill Moshe, and he sought to kill Moses. Now, again, it's a foreshadowing for our situation as a nation. When Pharaoh is going to hear that we want to go out of Egypt, leading by Moshe, he will want to kill us. In other words, his temper is changing, but he doesn't think twice. I mean, to kill someone is a heavy thing, and he just pulls it out of himself and is like, yeah, he sought to kill Moshe, not knowing the entire story. And we're going to meet that same Pharaoh at the end, at the end of the story, where Moshe and Aaron are going to stand in front of him and asking for the entire people to leave Mitzrayim, and this act of rage is going to repeat itself. But then the story continues as the following. Let me just read it in the Hebrew again. וישמע פרעה את הדבר הזה, ויבקש להרוג את משה. And let's just hear the difference between him and his daughter. His daughter seeked to help Moshe, to save Moshe, to help him live, and her father is asking, he wants to kill Moshe. ויברח משה מפני פרעה, and Moshe is running away from Paro. And if you remember, I said last week that in a very beautiful way, we can see it all through the story. Everything that happens to Moshe is going to happen to the nation, to us as people. And like Moshe is living his life according to what we're going to experience, and there's a reason for that. We'll offer one reason, and be happy to hear more reasons if you have when we get it. But ויברח Moshe מפני Moshe, and Moshe fled from Pharaoh, is of course what's going to happen to us as a nation. We are going to flee from Pharaoh. And what happens after he runs away from Pharaoh? וישב בארץ Midian. Now Midian was a country south to Egypt, into the big desert. And so Moshe runs south, doesn't run north towards the land of Israel, or east towards the Jordan hills. He runs south towards the big desert. וישב בארץ Midian, וישב על הבאר. Now twice the pasuk says, he arrived and sat or settled in Midian, and then he sat down or settled by the well, beside a well. And those two words, vayeshev, vayeshev, in this sentence are also very, very interesting, because he's not there to stay there. So there's a difference between vayeshev be'eretz Canaan, and he settled in the land of Midian, right? And we hear vayeshev be'eretz Canaan shel Yaakov and vayeshev be'eretz Canaan shel Avraham. But he's not there forever. But he has no other land to sit. He's nowhere to go. He can't go back to Mitzrayim because he is afraid of Paro. So he settled down in Eretz Midian, and then Vayeshev al habe'er. Okay, here we can't say he dwelled, right? Here is literally he sat down, and he sat down beside a well. And the Torah, and I'm sure you already know that, but the Torah speaks with code words. And sitting by the well, sitting down beside a well, is not a new thing for us. We've met that before, and it becomes like a hint and a code for people in the past, and we'll see it in a minute. And I just want to show you that what the Torah is doing is taking Moshe. He was deep inside Mitzrayim. He grew up and he went out to his brethren, to his king's folks. But he was deep in Mitzrayim, and he saw something, and that something slowly brought him out of Mitzrayim, out of feeling connected to Mitzrayim, feeling belonging to Mitzrayim, and even though it took him away from his own people. And the movement is outside from Mitzrayim towards the desert of Midian. And the story goes and focuses on Moshe. He runs away from Paro and he runs away to Midian, And then he sits down. And when he sits down, we need to sit down with him, right? He was on a flea, he was running away, and now he sits down and what's going to happen in those two dwellings, to dwell in the land of Midian and to sit by the Be'er. And I want to just, have a quick look at the previous whale stories that we had just before that story in the book of Bereshit. And actually the Midrash in Shmot Rabbah, the Midrash of Shmot Rabbah, is saying the following words. וישב בארץ מדיין וישב על הבאר, קלט דרך אבות. In other words, the Midrash is saying there's something from his forefathers that he understood, or that came upon him, even though maybe he did not know all the stories, or maybe he knew some of the stories. But when it sounds like the Midrash is saying, when Moshe was thinking to himself, what shall I do? What shall I do? Where shall I go? And he thought to himself, oh, yes, right. My forefathers back there in Canaan, when they did not know where to go, when they were on the run or on their way, they sat down by the well. So he got something out of it, like there was an idea there. Maybe he didn't really know exactly what's going to happen, but he knew that to sit by the well is a good thing. And now the Midrash is telling us, yes, three figures in Tanakh or in Chumash found their shidduch, found their wife by the well. It was Yitzchak, nachon, that it says ביצחק ויצא יצחק מבו באר ונזדווגה רבקה אליעזר למעיין, נכון? Yitzchak just came out from being next to the well of Hagar. It's less important right now, but Eliezer finds Rivka next to the well or next to the fountain. It doesn't matter, it's the same thing. And so here, when Eliezer is going to Haran and he's looking for a wife for Yitzchak, he goes straight to the well, because the well was the place of the gathering of the young women. It's very interesting. We know it from the entire area that the shepherding had two parts to it. One was the young men used to take the sheep to the mountains, but then when they wanted to give them water, so they would bring them closer to home, and then the young women used to take the sheep to the well and help them with the water. And it became like a social gathering of around the well. So Yitzchak was the first one that his wife was found by the well. And Yaakov, also about Yaakov, when Yaakov runs away to Haran, and he sits by the well, and there Rachel comes with the sheep, and he sees Rachel, and he falls in love. And Yaakov is another one who finds his wife by the well. Moshe vayeshev al habe'er. Well, we haven't read yet how he found his wife there, but what the Midrash is trying to tell us, that he went to the well, even if he didn't know exactly what he was going to do there, but there was something inside of him that felt that going to the well is the right thing to do. So he's going to Midian, and he's sitting down beside a well, and then and now the question is not how old he is and where is Moshe. He was in Mitzrayim. He was in the household of daughters Pharaoh, and then he went out to see his people, and then he runs away. And right now he's in Midian, and he's sitting by the well. If you remember the other question we asked, how old was he? And I said there are two options. The option of he was Vayigdal, and he grew up a little bit, some time passed. How old was it? Was he 15? Was he 20? Was he 25? But then he leaves him a long time to be at the desert, because we know that he was 80 years old. The Torah says so explicitly. He was 80 years old when he went back to Mitzrayim to save the Jews. So if we say that he's 20, that leaves us for 60 years in the desert. So it makes sense in terms of how old he was when he came out from the palace, but it leaves him too long to be at the desert. The other option, which I said I like just because of the symbolic number of it, is to say that when he went out from the palace, he was 40, and he ran away, and he was at the desert for 40 years. And then when he was 80, he came back, he went back to Mitzrayim. And I said that this in that way we get perfectly the idea of Moshe experiencing exactly what the people of Israel are going to experience when he takes them out of the desert, and they're going to spend 40 years in the desert. He did it himself with his own life. But right now he is in Midian, and he sits by the desert, and a surprise. And now the priest of Midian had 7 daughters. They came to draw water and filled the trouts to water their father's flock. Okay, is it a incident? Is it a coincidence that a well is a place of meeting a shidduch, and then he sits by the well, and all of a sudden there's 7 girls of Kohen Midian are coming to water their father's flock? But even though it sounds very very innocent and very natural, because all the girls go there to help with the water, and we already have a sense or a hint that if he's on the well, if he's on the be'er, he's going to meet a woman. Or what are we going to do with 7, right? How are we going to choose, or how is he going to choose the one of the 7? But the more interesting or surprising detail is the fact that we're talking about the daughters of the priest of Midian. In other words, this is a man of Avodah Zarah. Like, does it make sense that Moshe is going to marry someone who is Ovedet Avodah Zarah? Okay. So, and they come, and they fill up the trouts and water their father's flock. Vayavohu haroim vayagershum. But the shepherds, the male shepherds, came and drove them off. And what did Moshe do? Listen carefully to how the Torah describes what he's doing. Vayakom Moshe vayoshian. And Moses rose to their defense. Now, the English doesn't carry the same amazing meaning that we have in the Hebrew. Vayakom Moshe vayoshian, he redeemed them. Not just, he rose to their defense. He got up, Vayakom, and he saved them, and he redeemed them. And again, this is exactly, he has to go through more and more personal experiences that will make him fit to take out to help the entire nation come out of Egypt. Because what Moshe will have to do in Egypt is to rise and to help and to redeem the people. Now he's doing it in a small amount. He's there by the well, and you see that the shepherds are not being very polite to these young women, and he rose to their defense, and he watered their flock. He's really being a perfect gentleman. Not only did he push the shepherds away, and so they won't hurt them, but he also physically watered their flock. But there's another thing that is hidden here in this very nice piece of information, is apparently now we can also understand the fact that we didn't ask about Moshe killing the Egyptian. That means he was very strong. And here again, here is few people, not only one. Vayavohu haroim, we're talking about shepherds. How many were there? We don't know, but it was definitely more than 1 or 2. And Moshe is able to drove all of them off. In other words, the Torah is telling us that we're talking about physically a very strong person, that that we wouldn't have think that that's a detail that we have to hear about Moshe. Okay. So he helps them, and he is showing himself to us, to the readers, that he also is a redeemer, a savior. And he also continues that look on life with glasses of justice. Wherever there's injustice, he's stepping in to get the things right. And those girls, those 7 girls, um, when they returned to their father Reuel, that's his name. We'll say something about it. He said, "How is it that you have come back so soon today?" And we hear that was an ongoing thing, apparently, that they used to, whenever they used to come before the shepherds, they start watering their flock, but then the shepherds will push them away, let their own flocks drink first, and then the daughters of the priest of Midian had to give their flock whatever was left, and he was used to them being late to come back home. And when they came so soon, so their father turns to them and he says, "Well, how is it that you have come back so soon today?" And they said, and they answered, "An Egyptian rescued us from the shepherds." Now, that's another thing that the Torah keeps hidden from us. Of course, if it would take 2 minutes to think about it, we would be able to say it. But it's not the first thing comes up to mind. Obviously, he looks like an Egyptian. He just came out from the palace of Bat Paro, with his own Egyptian look. And his brothers knew he was Hebrew. That's why the nasty person told him, "Who are you? What do you think? You just came out of the palace so you can rule over us?" And they knew he was Hebrew. But when he ran away to Midian, what they see is an Egyptian clothing. He wears he wears his clothes from home, from Bat Paro's home. So when they come to their father, they said, "Oh, an Egyptian rescued us from the shepherds. And he even drew water for us and watered the flock." That's another thing which is familiar, because we know this is exactly what Rivka did to Yitzchak and the camels. In other words, not only did he help us against the shepherds, but he also did this very difficult work. They were 7. He did it by himself to water the entire flock, which is another hint for how strong he is and how kind he is and how well behaved he is, etc. And the reaction of the priest of Midian, and I just want to say something about his name, because we know his name is Yitro. We just read Parashat Yitro this week, but they call the Torah, the first name that the Torah uses is Reuel, and Chazal are saying that Yitro had many names. Maybe Reuel was his father's name. It doesn't really matter for us. That's another name for Reuel. But it's important to know that he was a priest. Now, his reaction to the story of his daughters is also amazing, because he turns to his daughter and he said to his daughters, "Where is he then? Why did you leave the man? Ask him to break bread." Now, this reaction by Yitro, Vayomer el bnotav ve'ayo, and where is he? How come you left him there by the well in the desert, a stranger that we know he just came from Egypt? So in other words, this is not his native place. You just left him there, and he calls him Ish. And we know that the word Ish in Chumash is always hinting for someone important. Why did you leave the Ish? Go call him, and we can, we have a feast for him. We'll give him dinner. We'll say thank you for everything that he did for you. Now, why is that? Why is it so important for the Torah to introduce us to Yitro by these words? And I want to suggest that, again, this is another thing that Moshe has to learn and to adopt in his manners, in his life experience, before he becomes the redeemer of a nation and helps shape the nation throughout the desert. And I want us to just go back a little bit to the beginning of the series, where we talked about the women in Moshe's life, right? It started with his mother, and then with his sister, and then with Bat Paro. In other words, according to the Torah, according to the story in the Torah, not in Midrashim, according to the story in the Torah, Moshe grows up only with women figure around him. Now, that is another significant thing. In order to feel for the people, in order to care for the people, he has to know what it means to have, motherly love. And this is the experience he get. But we can't just have that. He has to have the other side, which is a father, a male figure in his life, which he never had in a significant way. And Yitro is the man that Moshe meets for the first time, that becomes a very significant person in his life. And he, in a way, becomes his mentor for at least 40 years in the desert before he goes back to Mitzrayim. And from the words of Yitro to his sister, his daughters, we also hear that even though he's a Midianic priest, nevertheless, he is a kind man. He is, he is looking to do the right hospitality to this stranger who just came from nowhere. And the idea, and I just, like you to think about it in the broader perspective of the people of Israel. How many times did we have to be the strangers in foreign countries and lands? And the experience of the Jewish people starts from being foreigners, ger hayita be'eretz nochriya. And then we go to our land and we live there for a few hundred years, and we go back to exile, and again we are being foreigners in a foreign land, and then again there's another exile, and it took 2,000 years before we built our own went back to our land and built our own state. What Yitro is teaching Moshe is that the fundamental thing that you have, the basic thing that you have to have, is to know to be nice, to be polite, to be welcoming, to open your heart and to the stranger. And what Moshe is learning in the house of Yitro is to look at everyone and see what everyone needs. He will have to teach that to his people. And when we look at the Torah, this is something Rabbi Sachs likes to mention again and again and again. Like, it's so clear that our experience in Egypt became God's main focus in directing us, in guiding us on how to behave in this world. And once the Torah mentioned to love God, once the Torah mentions love, your fellow, love each other, and 36 times the Torah mentioned to love the ger, the stranger, because our experience in Mitzrayim to be strangers is what gave us the ability to know that the ability to look at every other, which is very different than us, and know that they have the permission to live, because they were also created in the image of God. But out of all the people in Egypt, Moshe was the only one who never experienced being a stranger. Because he grew up as an Egyptian in Bat Parah's house. In other words, his experience with Yitro is also to have some kind of feeling outsider and a stranger in someone else's household. And Yitro is teaching him a lot of things. We see it, I can't go deep into that because it brings us away from the topic, but what Yitro is telling his daughter is definitely something, however, well respected and educated and a mensch, that is telling his daughter, well, where is he? We have to have some, recognition in what he does. He did. We have to say toda. We have to say thank you. And now another surprise. And he tells, where is the man? Why did you leave him? Ask him ask him in to break bread. And we would expect the next verse to be, and they went back to the well, and they called Moshe, and Moshe came back with them back home. But no, the next pasuk is telling us ויואל משה לשבת את האיש, which is few words. We have four meaningful words here. ויואל משה לשבת את האיש, and Moses consented to stay with the man. In other words, the reason why Moshe agreed to stay in Midian is because something about Yitro caught his eye. He started to be fond of Yitro. There's something about the character of Yitro that fascinated him, and he was willing to dwell there with him for more. And then, as a consequences of that, he gave Moshe his daughter Tzipporah as wife, and one of the 7 daughters was lucky to be the wife, to get married of Moshe. And of course, all the commentators are saying, why specifically her? If there's 7 daughters, why did he choose her? Many reasons, many different reasons that the commentators are saying, but knowing the depth of Yitro, probably he felt that she was the most, appropriate match to Moshe, or maybe she was the oldest and she wasn't married yet. We don't know. Okay. But the first half of the pasuk is fascinating. In other words, Moshe doesn't have any plans. He came to Midian. He flew. He ran away south to the desert, got to the well, got himself by the house of Yitro, who was a priest, and he's willing, consent to stay with him, meaning that Yitro was trying to persuade him to stay, and Moshe said okay. And it was interesting enough, apparently, for him to stay long and marry Tzipporah, and he stayed there for 40 years. And again, how old is Moshe, and where is Moshe? Midian, that was sounded like one step in his fleeing, became a temporary, a permanent place for 40 years is a long time. And he is, and he's actually, most of his adult life he's doing there in Midian. And the next thing we hear about Moshe, ויואל משה לשבת את האיש ויתן ציפורה ביתו למשה, and then he has children. ותלד בן ויקרא את שמו גרשום, כי אמר גר הייתי בארץ נוכריה. She bore a son whom he named Gershom, associated with Gersham, a stranger there, for he said, I have been a stranger in a foreign land. And I ask you, what is the foreign land that he was a stranger at? Is he referring to Midian? That he's a foreigner in Midian? Is he referring to Mitzrayim? That he was a foreigner in Mitzrayim? But nevertheless, his firstborn Gershom carries the fact, his story, the historical event of him being a stranger, both in Mitzrayim eventually and in Midian. Where is he to go? That won't be Eretz Nochriya, won't be a foreign land. That he will find after, only when God will talk to him and send him to his mission, to his shlichut. But again, what we find here is echoing again the experience of the people of Israel. They went down to Mitzrayim as the children of Yaakov, just for temporary time till the famine will end in Canaan. But things come to be that they dwell there for hundreds of years, and they sat there for too long, and they didn't go back to Canaan when they could, till a certain point where there was a new king and he started to enslave them, and then that was impossible to leave Mitzrayim. But the same experience that Moshe is experiencing, and he's naming his son after that experience, is also what the people of Israel are experiencing in the land of Mitzrayim. And we know by that he understands that he has to find his homeland, and the people of Israel will have to find their homeland. They have to go back to their homeland, and the homeland is Canaan. and God is the one who's going to show them the way. And right after he has his first child, the Torah is telling us, like one verse after that, the Torah is telling us, "Vahi bayamim harabim hahem." A long time after that, a long time after what? "Vahi bayamim harabim hahem," and it's after Gershom was born, or after Moshe ran away from Mitzrayim. Okay, but it sounds like it's closer, to the end of the time where Moshe is in Egypt. It's in Midian, because we know that right after God is turning to Moshe, he goes back to Egypt. But the verse that is connecting the life of Moshe in Midian and going back in his mission, in his shlichut to Egypt, the words are, "Vayehi bayamim harabim hahem," after many, many days, "Vayamot melech Mitzrayim," the king of Egypt, died. Which king died? The king who enslaved the people of Israel so badly, so harshly. The king who wanted to kill Moshe because he heard he killed an Egyptian. The king who was the father of the daughter of Pharaoh who adopted Moshe. And he died, and now maybe something new is going to happen. And indeed, the first thing that happens, and the people of Israel sighed. Let's see the English. A long time after that, the king of Egypt died, and the Israelites were groaning after the bondage and cried out. Okay, with your permission, I want to stay with the Hebrew for a little bit longer. They sighed. Granted. In other words, the only sound the people of Israel could make after the king who put so much avodat pareh, who enslaved them so badly, could do is not say words, not sing a song. They just sighed because the work was so hard. And there was a little bit of a relief when they heard he died, but no one knows what's going to happen tomorrow. As we said, like being a slave is never to know what I will wake up to tomorrow morning. And is it good that he died? Is the one that's going to come after him will be nicer to us? Or maybe he'll be crueler? Is it good or bad? But there's like a little break that they can just sigh from the job, but they did something else. Vayanchu bnei Israel min ha'avodah, vayiz'aku, they cried out. And crying out, like a wounded animal, like a person in crisis, and they cry out, and their cry for help from the bondage rose up to God. ויהי בימים הרבים ההם וימות מלך מצרים, ויאנחו בני ישראל, and they sat from the hard work, and they cried out, and their cry came up to God. There's a king of Egypt, and there's God, and there's no connection. There's a king of Egypt who thought he was the God, but there's God who is controlling and ruling on everything. And what the people of Israel are doing now, we need to ask ourselves, is that the first time? Is that the first time when the people of Israel are crying out to God for help? Now it says mina avodah, out of their cry for help from the bondage. In other words, it was the hard work that made them, the only sound they can do is a cry, no words. They just cry out to God out of pain and out of despair. And yes, maybe they never did it before. Maybe never before did they find the break to cry. And maybe maybe they didn't have the time because they were so suffering under the bondage and the work and the hardship. And after when Melech Mitzrayim died, it's the time for the real king to rise and to start the redemption from Mitzrayim. And the cry rose up, Bata'al rose up to God. Now the rising up, and if we try to find, if we'll try to find hint words for the beginning of the redemption. So it was the good kid that was born, and his mother kept him in the basket, and he got a name, and he was different. He never experienced slavery, and there's some kind of rising up, right? Even though the rising up now is the cry, but there's some kind of a wave up, of an emotion, of a turning up, and looking up and asking for help. And indeed, Vayishma Elohim et na'akatam, and God heard their moaning, and God remembered his covenant with Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. They cried to God, and he heard. And that's another thing that the people of Israel will have to learn. And I would even say that in a way, they experienced that before Moshe. Moshe is in Midian. He's working with, talking to Yitro, and he's a shepherd. He's the shepherd of Yitro's flock. What's happening in Egypt? Like it's a split of our screen. There's Midian with Moshe and Yitro and Tzipporah and his son, and there's Egypt with the slavery and the death of Pharaoh, and God hearing the voice, God hearing the groaning, Vayishma. The people of Israel will have to experience, and we have to learn, and we have to believe that God listens, and they have to believe that God hears the cry. In other words, no slave will ever cry out for help if no one's there to listen. And the first time when they cry out out of despair, maybe it's the first time that something inside of them moves and reminds them that their ancestor used to, pray to God and talk to God and ask help from God. And they're moving this, and God listens. And what happened when God listens? He remembers. Now, of course, theologically, it's a little bit difficult to say that God remembers, because God doesn't forget and God doesn't remember. Like he's whole, and theologically, there's, the Rambam will definitely explain it in a different way. And Unkanus, the first Aramaic Targum in the first century in the land of Israel, never ever translate anything that it will sound like there's a personification of God. But the simple pshat of the text is that God listened, God heard, and God remembered. ויזכור אלוהים את בריתו, את אברהם, את יצחק ואת יעקב. And the word covenant, brit, is another essential, crucial word here, because what the people of Israel know with agreements in the ancient world is that there's an agreement between the king and the people, between an individual and individual, and we sign a contract. But the Torah is teaching us a new word. The Torah is teaching us the word brit, which is a covenant not between human beings, not between the king and his people, what he has to do for them and what they have to give to him. It's a covenant between God and people. And that's a huge, huge, huge new idea that rise up in the ancient world at that time. The idea that the God is having a covenant with people, which means, let's just understand what it means. It means that not only they have to do things for him, that he also must do things for them. He also is obligated to do things for them. That's the meaning of covenant. It's two sides. It's not one side. It's two sides. And it's a great chiddush. It's a great new thing in the ancient world. And what this pasuk is saying, that when God hears the cry, he says, it's like he tells himself, is as God says, okay, the people of Israel remembered, that I'm there, that they should cry to me and not to a king, no human king. But then he also remembered that there's a covenant that he signed in the past with the forefathers of those people, with Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, and he owes them. That's the meaning of the Brit. It means that he owes them. He owes Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov the safety of their children. And he also promised Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov that their children will become a nation. And this is the time to do it. So when he hears and remembers, ויזכור את בריתו, את אברהם, את יצחק ואת יעקב, וירא אלוהים את בני ישראל, וידע אלוהים. That's really beautiful. It's very, very enigmatic, like very closed, like there's the words missing here. וירא אלוהים את בני ישראל. God looked upon the Israelite, or God saw the Israelite. Okay, he has seen them before. What do you mean he saw them? What did he see? And the pasuk doesn't tell us, and we can just imagine. What did he see? He saw, obviously, he saw their suffering before. Like, what was the new thing? What was the new thing? Maybe what he saw was that it's time. It's time to get together those individuals that are, that are working in Egypt for 210 years, and they came as a family, and this is the time to put them together as a nation. That's one thing that he saw. And another thing that God sees that, well, we need a leader, right? We need a leader. That means that the people in Egypt they cannot be the leaders who will lead the people of Israel out of Egypt. But we know that back in Midian, God already had a plan to put Moshe through experience that will make him the best leader that people of Israel will do. So our split screen, we have Moshe going through training without him knowing that he goes through training to become a leader. And the people of Israel, something new is happening. The king died. God's rise, their cry rises to God. There's a covenant. It's time to fulfill the covenant. So God sees everything. But another thing it says, Vayeda Elohim. And God knows. Now, in Hebrew, it's Vayeda Elohim and God knows. In the English, said God took notice of them. Okay, that's already an interpretation. It's not just a translation. What did God know? Now, we know that the verb lada'at is a verb of intimacy. Adam yada et ishto. It's something that the people know about themselves, but we also use it about God, something very intimate that's happening to God, which will stay as like unclear to us people, but there's something very deep that God realizes about the situation, about them, or he reminds himself not only about Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, but also about the fact that their children and his children are suffering, and maybe he knew it's time, because who else will know when is the right time to take out the people, to save the people of Israel? Where is the right time to make them a nation? Susan?
Possible that if you go back to Vayara Elokim et Bnei Israel, maybe what he saw was that they were still Bnei Israel, not just that they were slaves. There were other people who were also slaves, but that they had in fact maintained themselves so that when he looks, he can still see Bnei Israel, and that evokes a sense of intimacy with them because he has this belief. We have history.
That's beautiful.
Going back to Abraham.
Susan, that's really beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. He doesn't see slaves. He sees the people of Israel. He sees the children of Israel. That's really beautiful. And then, that will bring him to Vayeda. It's them and it's the inside. And that is connected to what the Midrashim are saying, that they kept their language and they kept their clothing and they kept so there's an aspect of them that they didn't lose. And it is definitely significant that he saw the people of Israel. Now, let me just stop here. And I want to show you just a second. Okay. Sorry, it took me time to find it. Here. So the verse we saw that God saw the Israelite and he knew was the last verse in chapter 2 that started, if you remember, with the walking of Abraham and Amram. Maybe this is important to say. So let's stop that before I show you that. Just to have the closure. The end of Perek Bet is Vayar Elohim et Bnei Israel Vayada Elohim. Now he knew, he saw, he noticed them, any way that you want to say it. The beginning of that chapter was, and a person from the house of Levi took the daughter of Levi. And if you remember, I said that why the Torah doesn't tell us the names. We know his name is Amram. We know her name is Yochevet. And then it also talks about the sister standing from afar to watch the baby. And it doesn't say Miriam, it says Vatetatzav Achoto, his sister. Why don't you tell me her name? And after that, Miriam, the sister, goes fetch the mother to nurse the baby, and she brings the baby to Bat Paro, and Bat Paro names him Moshe. The change in the, let's call it the history of the slavery in Egypt, also started from there. In other words, as long as they were slaves and there was no hope, a personal name is not significant. Because even if I have a personal name, I don't even remember it because I'm so busy with the work. A personal name is something to be proud of, or something tells me something about myself, tell the other people about me. There's no meaning for names in slavery. So the Torah is playing along with that. There was a man and a woman, and they give birth to a baby, no name, and there's a sister who's standing there. And then the first name that comes up in the story is the name of Moshe. Moshe, who is in Egyptian, as we showed, in Egyptian is the son of, that's what Bat Parol is calling him, but he's also the one that was drawn away from the water, and he will draw out the people of Israel from the water, from Egypt. And the redemption starts there, when there is a person from Am Israel who has a private name, who has an identity, a strong identity, who wasn't raised as a slave, but as a person who knows his might and his limits, and we know it from the stories afterwards. And from that point on, we will know about everyone's names. We know the daughters of Yitro, and we know her name is Tzipporah. And all of a sudden, names comes up to the surface because redemption has started in very, very little, measures, but it has started. And what happens to Moshe in Midian is training towards becoming a leader. He has everything that it takes. He has the might, he has the strength, he has the vision, he has the justice. He just doesn't know that this is what he's going to do, because Vayeshiv, the Midian, is almost as repeating the mistake that his forefathers did, to sit down to dwell in Egypt. But the difference was that the man he met was not the king of Mitzrayim, not Pharaoh. He met Yitro. And Yitro, I really like the figure of Yitro. I think Yitro is one of the fascinating figures that we have in Tanakh. And in other words, we have a person that Chazal are saying Yitro was fascinated by faith and religion. He tried all kind of religion, and in my imagination, I imagine Moshe and Yitro having a chavruta in theology, trying to figure out the big questions of life. And Yitro is there just being so welcoming and giving. Well, maybe also because he had 7 girls, and all of a sudden he had this guy next to him. I don't know, but definitely some very, very meaningful relationship between Yitro and Moshe. And also Yitro was a leader. Moshe cannot learn leadership skills from Paro. Because he was very far away from Paro. He grew up in Bat Paro's house. But Yitro was a leader. He was a religious leader, and he was a leader of a tribe. Yeah, we can imagine Yitro more like a Bedouin sheikh. Yeah, who has lots of families under his ruling. He could teach Moshe leadership skills, and maybe let's just close the story with Yitro. Maybe it's not for no reason that when the people of Israel enter the land, and during the time of Yoshua, and during the time of Shoftim, and also during the time of David HaMelech, we know that the tribes that belonged to Yitro, Kinim were Midianim from Yitro. I'll tell you a famous name, Yael Eshet Chever HaKeni, Yael who killed Sisra in the story of Dvorah in Sefer Shoftim. She was from a tribe of Midian, of kin of Yitro. In other words, they kept good relationship with the people of Israel in the land of Israel, and they were to be trusted. And the amazing thing, it's really mind blowing. But you know that the Druze believe that Yitro is their prophet. And up till today, we know how loyal and close the Druze are with the people of Israel. So, maybe there is a connection there. But we'll stop here and we'll continue next week. Unless someone wants to say something, anything? Okay. So have a Shavua Tov, and I'll see you next week.
שבוע טוב, תודה
Thank you
רבה.
so much.
Thank you, שבוע טוב.
Bye.
תודה רבה.